The people we trust most are often the ones who can hurt us the deepest. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 stories that will make you question everyone in your inner circle. Stories about friendships that turned into nightmares, secrets that should have stayed buried, and trust that was weaponized in the most terrifying ways possible. By the end of this video, you'll understand why sometimes the monster isn't hiding under your bed. It's sitting right next to you, calling you their best friend. These are 3 disturbing close friends horror stories, and I promise you, you've never heard anything quite like these before. In the summer of 2019, 16-year-old Maya Chen thought she knew everything about her best friend, Jessica. They'd been inseparable since middle school. Shared secrets, crushes, dreams about college. Jessica was the sister Maya never had. So when Jessica invited her for a weekend sleepover at her family's cabin in the mountains of Colorado, Maya didn't hesitate to say yes. The cabin was isolated, 30 minutes from the nearest neighbor, surrounded by dense pine trees that seemed to swallow sound. Jessica's parents had dropped them off Friday evening with enough food for the weekend, promising to pick them up Sunday afternoon. "Just us girls," Jessica had said with that bright smile Maya knew so well. No parents, no rules, just like we always talked about. That first night was perfect. They stayed up until 3 a.m., watching horror movies, eating junk food, painting each other's nails. Maya felt grateful to have a friend like Jessica, someone who understood her completely, someone she could trust with anything. But Saturday morning, something changed. Maya woke up to find Jessica standing by the window, perfectly still, staring out into the woods. She'd been standing there so long that her breath had fogged up the glass around her face. "Jess, you okay?" Jessica didn't respond, didn't even blink. Maya called her name again, louder this time. Finally, Jessica turned around. Her smile was different, wider than usual, almost hungry. "I was just watching them," Jessica said softly. "Watching who?" "The people in the trees." Maya looked out the window, nothing but pine trees and morning shadows. "Jess, there's nobody out there." Jessica's smile grew even wider. "Not yet." The rest of Saturday passed in a blur of strange moments. Jessica kept disappearing for hours at a time, claiming she was exploring the property. When she returned, her shoes were always muddy, sometimes with what looked like dark stains. She'd changed into different clothes each time, but Maya never saw her bring extra outfits. That evening, Jessica suggested they play a game. "It's called Trust," Jessica explained, pulling out a roll of duct tape from her backpack. "We take turns being blindfolded and tied up. The other person leads you around, and you have to trust them completely. It's supposed to bring friends closer together." Maya felt uncomfortable. "I don't know, Jess. That sounds kind of what? Don't you trust me?" Jessica's voice had an edge to it now. "I thought we were best friends. I thought we told each other everything." Maya nodded reluctantly. They were best friends. She did trust Jessica, even if something felt off. "Okay," Maya said. "But just for a few minutes." Jessica's eyes lit up. "You go first." The blindfold was tight, too tight. Maya could feel it pressing into her eye sockets. Then came the tape around her wrists. Jessica wrapped it around and around, far more than necessary. "Jess, that's really tight. Trust me," Jessica whispered, her voice right by Maya's ear. "Just trust me." Jessica led her outside. Maya could feel the cold mountain air, hear the crunch of pine needles under her feet. They walked for what felt like forever. Up hills, around trees, deeper into the woods than Maya had ever been. Finally, they stopped. "Jessica, can you take the blindfold off now?" Silence. "Jessica?" More silence. Maya tried to move her hands, but the tape was too tight. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore. "Jessica!" A voice came from somewhere in the distance. But it wasn't Jessica's voice. It was deeper, older, male. "She's not coming back." Maya's blood turned to ice. "Who's there? Where's Jessica?" Footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. "Jessica's been telling us all about you, Maya. How you trust her, how you tell her everything, how you do anything for her. I don't understand. Where is she?" A different voice now, also male, but younger. "She's watching, from up there." Maya heard him point to something above them. "She likes to watch." Maya struggled against the tape, panic flooding her system. "Let me go! Jessica!" A laugh echoed from the trees above. It was Jessica's laugh, but wrong somehow. Hollow. "The thing about trust," the first voice said, and Maya could feel him getting closer, "is that it makes people so easy to control. Jessica learned that a long time ago. Didn't you, sweetheart?" "I did, Daddy," came Jessica's voice from somewhere in the canopy. "She trusted me completely, just like all the others." Maya's mind raced. "Others? What others?" "What do you want?" Maya whispered. "We want you to understand something," the second voice said. "Friendship isn't real. Love isn't real. The only thing that's real is survival. And right now, you're not very good at it." Maya heard the sound of metal scraping against wood, a knife being sharpened. "Jessica and I have been practicing this for years," the first voice continued. "She finds them, befriends them, gains their trust, brings them here, and then we teach them the truth about human nature." Jessica's voice drifted down from the trees. "That when it really matters, everyone only cares about themselves." Maya felt the cold metal of a blade against her throat. "Here's what's going to happen," the first voice whispered. "We're going to play a little game. If you can make it back to the cabin before sunrise, you live. If not," the blade pressed slightly deeper, "well, let's just say Jessica will need to find a new best friend." The tape around her wrists was suddenly cut, the blindfold ripped away. Maya blinked in the dim evening light, trying to get her bearings. She was in a clearing she'd never seen before, surrounded by tall pine trees. No idea which direction led back to the cabin. Above her, Jessica sat on a thick branch, legs swinging like a child on a playground, but her face was different. The warmth was gone. The kindness Maya had known for years had been replaced by something cold and calculating. "Better start running, bestie," Jessica called down cheerfully. "You've got about 8 hours." Maya ran. She crashed through the forest, branches tearing at her clothes, rocks cutting her feet through her thin socks. Behind her, she could hear them following, not chasing exactly, but tracking. Like hunters who knew their prey had nowhere to go. Hours passed. Maya was lost, exhausted, bleeding from dozens of cuts. She'd been running in circles, she realized. The same fallen log kept appearing in her path. The same cluster of birch trees. They were herding her, like wolves with a wounded deer. Just before dawn, Maya stumbled into a small clearing and saw something that made her stomach lurch. Scattered around the area were personal items. A backpack with Emma embroidered on it. A pair of sneakers, size 7. A cell phone with a cracked screen showing dozens of missed calls from Mom. How many others had Jessica brought here? How many best friends had played this game? That's when Maya understood. This wasn't about her. This wasn't even really about Jessica. This was about something much darker. A family tradition, maybe. A sickness that had been passed down. Maya found the cabin just as the sun broke the horizon. She burst through the door, gasping, bleeding, traumatized beyond belief, but the cabin was empty. Jessica's things were gone. The car keys her parents had left were missing. Maya's phone had no signal, but she kept trying. For 3 hours, she dialed 911, over and over. Finally, a single bar appeared. 911, what's your emergency? I need help, my friend. She tried to kill me. I'm at a cabin in the mountains and... Ma'am, can you tell me your location? Maya realized she had no idea where she was. The address Jessica had given her parents was fake. The family cabin didn't exist in any official records. When the police finally found Maya 2 days later, following the GPS signal from her phone, they discovered something even more disturbing. The clearing where Maya had been left to die was littered with evidence of other victims. The FBI eventually linked the site to 17 missing persons cases dating back 12 years. But Jessica and her family were gone. Vanished completely, like they'd never existed at all. Maya spent months in therapy, trying to process what had happened. The betrayal was almost worse than the physical danger. Jessica hadn't just tried to kill her. She'd spent years building a friendship, learning Maya's fears and weaknesses, all so she could exploit them in the most horrific way possible. The therapist told Maya that some people are born without empathy, that they learn to mimic human emotions to blend in, but underneath, they're predators. Jessica had been studying Maya like a scientist studies a lab rat. Maya moved across the country after high school, changed her name, started over. But she never forgot the last thing Jessica had said to her, shouted from somewhere in the trees as Maya stumbled toward the cabin. Thanks for being such a good friend, Maya. You really taught me a lot about trust. The FBI is still looking for Jessica and her family. They believe the group has moved their operation to a different state, possibly using a different name. They're still out there, somewhere, with Jessica playing the role of the sweet, trustworthy teenager who just wants to be your best friend. Maya still has nightmares about that laugh in the trees, about how perfectly Jessica had played her role for years, about how many other girls might be out there right now thinking they've found their best friend forever. Sometimes, Maya wonders if Jessica ever thinks about her, if she misses their real friendship before Maya learned the truth. But then Maya remembers Jessica's face in that tree, watching with pure excitement as Maya ran for her life. Some people don't have friends. They collect them. In the fall of 2021, college sophomore David Park was struggling with his advanced photography class. The final project was worth 60% of his grade, and the assignment was simple but challenging. Document something hidden. Find a story that others couldn't see and bring it to light through photography. David had been stuck for weeks until his roommate and best friend Marcus offered to help. Marcus was everything David wasn't. Confident where David was shy, outgoing where David was introverted, popular where David was, well, not. They'd been randomly assigned as roommates freshman year, and somehow, despite their differences, they'd become genuinely close friends. I know exactly what you should photograph, Marcus said one night as David stared at his camera, frustrated and running out of time. There's this whole underground scene on campus that nobody talks about. Secret parties, exclusive clubs, stuff like that. I can get you access. David was intrigued. What kind of secret parties? Marcus grinned that charming smile that made everyone trust him instantly. The kind where people go to forget who they are during the day. Real, authentic stuff. Raw human emotion. Your professor will eat it up. David was desperate enough to agree. The first party Marcus took him to was in the basement of an off-campus house. Nothing too crazy at first glance, just college kids drinking, dancing, having fun. But Marcus encouraged David to look closer, to capture the moments between the moments. The girl crying in the corner while her friends partied around her. The guy staring into his drink like it held the answers to all his problems. This is good, Marcus said, looking over David's shoulder as he reviewed the photos. "But I know somewhere even better. More authentic." The second location was different, darker. It was in an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, and the people there weren't just college students. They were older, harder, with eyes that had seen things David couldn't imagine. "Just document what you see," Marcus whispered as they entered. "Don't interfere, don't judge. Just capture the truth." David started taking photos, and at first everything seemed fine. People were drinking, talking, some were dancing to music playing from someone's phone. But as the night went on, David noticed things that made him uncomfortable. People were doing more than just drinking. There were needles, pills, substances David couldn't identify. And in the darker corners of the warehouse, things were happening that David wasn't sure he should be documenting. "Marcus," David whispered, "I think we should go." But when David turned around, Marcus was gone. David spent 20 minutes looking for his friend, growing more and more anxious as he navigated through the crowd of strangers. Finally, he found Marcus in a back room, talking quietly with a group of older men in expensive suits. Something about the scene felt wrong. The way they were all looking at David, the way Marcus was nodding along to whatever they were saying. "There he is," Marcus said when he spotted David. "Guys, this is the photographer I was telling you about." One of the men stepped forward. He was well dressed, but there was something predatory about his smile. "Marcus tells us you're documenting our little community." "I'm just working on a school project," David said, suddenly wishing he'd never agreed to come. "School project," the man repeated, like the words tasted funny. "And what school would that be?" David felt trapped. He gave the name of their university. The man's smile widened. "Interesting. We have a lot of friends at that school. Professors, administrators, people who decide things like grades and scholarships." Another man spoke up. "Marcus showed us some of your work. Very talented, very detailed." David looked at Marcus, confused. "What work? I haven't shown you anything yet." Marcus wouldn't meet his eyes. "I might have taken a peek at your camera while you were shooting." David's blood ran cold. On his camera were photos he'd taken earlier in the night. Photos of faces, license plates, activities that could get people arrested. Or worse. "Here's what's going to happen," the first man said calmly. "You're going to give us that camera. All the photos, all the memory cards, everything. And then you're going to forget you were ever here." "I can't do that," David said. "This is for my final project. I need these photos." The man's expression hardened. "Son, you don't understand. These photos show things that could ruin lives. Important lives. People who don't like to be photographed." David looked around the room. Marcus was standing with the men now, no longer on David's side of the conversation. "Marcus, what's going on?" Marcus finally looked at him, and David saw something in his friend's eyes that he'd never noticed before. Something cold and calculating. "David, just give them the camera. It's not worth it." "Not worth what?" The room fell silent. David could hear his own heartbeat. "Marcus has been very helpful to us," the first man said. "He's what you might call a talent scout. He finds people with useful skills and brings them to our attention." David felt sick. "Useful skills?" "Photography skills. The ability to document things without being noticed. To blend in at parties, campus events, private gatherings." The man paused. "We have a lot of need for someone with your talents." David understood now. This wasn't about his school project. Marcus had been recruiting him. His best friend had set him up. "What if I say no?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Well, that would be unfortunate. You see, you've already seen quite a lot tonight. Faces, activities, conversations. If you're not going to be part of our organization, then you become a liability." David looked at Marcus desperately. "Dude, we're friends. You can't let them do this." Marcus shrugged. Business is business, man. Besides, they're offering good money. Enough to pay off my student loans and then some. Money? You're doing this for money? I'm doing this because I'm not stupid, Marcus snapped, his mask finally slipping completely. You think I actually wanted to be friends with you? You're socially awkward. You have no connections. You spend all your time alone with your camera. The only reason I stayed roommates with you was because I knew eventually you'd be useful. The words hit David like physical blows. 2 years of friendship revealed to be completely fake. But you helped me with homework. We stayed up talking about our families, our dreams. Marcus laughed, but it was harsh and ugly. I helped you with homework because I needed you to trust me. I talked about my family because I needed to learn about yours. Do you know how much research I had to do to pretend to care about photography? David felt everything he thought he knew about his life crumbling around him. Here's the deal, the first man interrupted. You work for us, part-time at first, document certain events, certain people. Or what? Or we make sure those photos you took tonight end up in the wrong hands, along with some additional photos we'll take of you here, with all these illegal substances visible in the background. David realized they'd been planning this from the beginning. Marcus had brought him here specifically to compromise him, to force him into this situation. Think about it, Marcus said, his voice friendly again, like they were just having a casual conversation. It's not that bad. You get to keep doing photography, you make some money, and you stay out of trouble. Everyone wins. David looked around the room one more time, at the men in expensive suits who clearly weren't going to take no for an answer. At Marcus, whose face had transformed into something David didn't recognize. I need to think about it, David said finally. The first man nodded. Of course. But think quickly. We'll need an answer by tomorrow night. They let David leave, but not before taking his camera and all his equipment. Insurance, they called it. David spent the entire night pacing his dorm room, trying to figure out what to do. Marcus didn't come back that night, or the next day. When David asked around, people said they'd seen Marcus packing up his things. By evening, David had made his decision. He went to the campus police and told them everything. The investigation that followed uncovered a network that had been operating for years. The parties were recruitment events. College students with useful skills were identified, compromised, and forced to work for what was essentially a criminal organization that specialized in blackmail and corporate espionage. Marcus was arrested 3 days later at the airport, trying to board a plane to another state. During his interrogation, he showed no remorse. He told police that David should have just taken the deal. It turned out Marcus had been targeting roommates for 3 years. David was the 4th person he'd tried to recruit. The other 3 had disappeared entirely. The case made national news. College roommate recruitment scheme exposed, read the headlines. But for David, the media attention was almost as traumatic as the original betrayal. David never completed his photography project. He dropped out of school that semester and moved back home with his parents. For months, he couldn't look at his camera without remembering Marcus's face in that warehouse. The face of someone he'd trusted completely, revealed to be a complete stranger. The worst part wasn't the danger he'd been in. It wasn't even the criminal organization. It was the realization that every conversation he'd had with Marcus, every moment of friendship, every time he'd felt grateful to have found someone who understood him, it had all been a lie. Marcus had studied him like a subject in an experiment, learning his weaknesses, his insecurities, his dreams, all so he could exploit them at the right moment. David eventually went back to school, but at a different university. He changed his major from photography to accounting, something safe. Something that didn't require trusting people or looking too closely at hidden truths. Marcus was sentenced to 8 years in prison. The organization he worked for was disbanded, its leaders arrested or fled. But David knew there were others out there. Other Marcuses. Building fake friendships for real purposes. Sometimes David wonders if he ever really knew Marcus at all. If any of their conversations were genuine, or if every word had been calculated. He wonders how many other people are out there right now, thinking they've found a great friend, not realizing they're being studied, cataloged, prepared for eventual exploitation. The hardest part is that David can't trust his own judgment anymore. If he could be so completely fooled by someone he lived with for 2 years, how can he trust anyone? David still has nightmares sometimes, not about the warehouse or the men in suits. He dreams about Marcus laughing with him over pizza, helping him study for exams, listening to him talk about his problems with what seemed like genuine concern. In the dreams, Marcus looks exactly like the friend David thought he knew. Warm, caring, trustworthy. David always wakes up feeling sick. In March 2020, when the world shut down and everyone was forced into isolation, 19-year-old Sarah Martinez was grateful for her friend group's group chat. She'd been part of the same circle since high school, 6 girls who'd stayed close through their first year of college despite attending different schools. The group chat was called Sisters Forever, and it lived up to its name. They shared everything. Their fears about online classes, their frustrations with family during lockdown, their crushes, their dreams, their darkest secrets. For Sarah, isolated in her childhood bedroom while the world fell apart outside, these 5 girls were her lifeline. There was Emma, the group's unofficial leader, always organizing virtual hangouts and checking on everyone. Mia, the funny one who could make anyone laugh, even on their worst days. Rachel, the intellectual who helped everyone with their schoolwork. Kate, the wild child who somehow always had the best stories. And finally, Jess, the quiet one who mostly listened but always knew exactly what to say when someone was hurting. They video chatted every day, played online games together, watched movies simultaneously while texting their reactions. For Sarah, who had struggled with depression even before the pandemic, the group chat was everything. But as the weeks turned into months, Sarah started noticing things. It began with small comments. Emma would mention conversations that Sarah didn't remember having. Mia would reference jokes that Sarah didn't understand. Sometimes Sarah would wake up to hundreds of messages in the group chat, conversations that had apparently gone on for hours while she slept. But when she scrolled back to read them, they seemed off somehow. The topics were strange. Detailed discussions about Sarah's daily routine, her family schedule, her personal habits. Why would her friends be so interested in what time her mom left for work or which window Sarah's bedroom faced? When Sarah asked about it, the responses were always casual, dismissive. "Oh, we were just worried about you," Emma would say. "Making sure you're staying safe." "We want to know you're okay," Mia would add. Friends look out for each other. But Sarah started screenshotting some of the conversations, and when she read them later, they felt more like surveillance than friendship. Then Sarah noticed something else. Sometimes when she was typing in the group chat, her message would show as delivered, but no one would respond. She'd wait hours, even try calling, but everyone would claim they never got her message. Other times, she'd receive screenshots of group chat conversations that she wasn't part of. Conversations between the other 5 girls, where they discussed Sarah in detail. Her moods, her insecurities, her family problems. When Sarah confronted them about this, they acted confused. "What other chat?" Emma asked during one of their video calls. "There's only one group chat. You're being paranoid." But Sarah had the screenshots. Proof that her friends were talking about her behind her back, analyzing her behavior, discussing her personal life in ways that felt clinical and cold. The breaking point came in July. Sarah had been having a particularly bad day. Her parents had been fighting. Her online classes were overwhelming her, and she was feeling more isolated than ever. She reached out to the group chat, sharing her feelings honestly, asking for support. The response was immediate and overwhelming. All 5 girls called her at once, insisting they needed to see her face to face. They were worried about her mental state, they said. They thought she might hurt herself. Sarah was confused. She'd been sad, yes, but not suicidal. She tried to explain this, but her friends wouldn't listen. "We're coming over," Emma announced. "We think you need help." "I'm fine," Sarah insisted. "I was just having a bad day. I don't need you to come over." But they were already coordinating in the group chat. Who would drive? What time they'd arrive? What they would bring? They were treating her like an emergency when all she'd wanted was a friendly conversation. Sarah turned off her phone and tried to calm down. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe her friends really were just worried about her. But then she heard voices outside her house. Sarah looked out her bedroom window and saw all 5 of her friends standing on her front lawn. They weren't knocking on the door or calling for her. They were just standing there, looking up at her window. Sarah's blood ran cold. She'd never given any of them her address. She grabbed her phone and called Emma. "Why are you at my house? How do you even know where I live?" Emma's voice was calm, almost soothing. "Sarah, we've always known where you live. We're your friends. We know everything about you. That's not normal. You need to leave. We can't do that. We're worried about you. We think you're having a mental breakdown." Sarah looked out the window again. Her friends were still there, but now they were spreading out, surrounding the house, like they were making sure she couldn't leave. "I'm calling the police," Sarah said. "Go ahead," Emma replied. "Tell them your friends came to check on you because you were talking about hurting yourself. See how that sounds?" Sarah realized the trap she was in. If she called the police, it would look exactly like Emma said. 5 concerned friends trying to help someone in crisis. But Sarah knew she hadn't talked about hurting herself. She scrolled back through the group chat to find her original message, the one that had triggered all this concern. The message wasn't there. In its place was something Sarah had never written. "I can't take this anymore. I don't want to be alive. I'm thinking about ending it all." Sarah stared at her phone in horror. Someone had edited the chat history, made it look like she'd written something she'd never said. She took screenshots, but even as she watched, those messages disappeared too, replaced by increasingly desperate texts that she'd never sent. Sarah tried calling her parents, but her phone showed no signal. The Wi-Fi wasn't working either. Somehow, she'd been completely cut off from the outside world. She looked out the window again. Her friends were closer now, standing just outside the front door. Emma was holding what looked like a key. Sarah's mind raced. How did Emma have a key to her house? That's when Sarah remembered something. 3 months ago, Emma had asked to borrow Sarah's keys for some reason, something about needing to move her car. Sarah had handed them over without thinking, the way you do with a trusted friend. Emma must have made copies. Sarah heard the front door open. Footsteps on the stairs. Voices in the hallway, discussing her condition, talking about her like she wasn't there. "She's been getting worse," Mia's voice. "More paranoid, more isolated." "The family history of mental illness doesn't help," Rachel added. "We might need to consider involuntary commitment," Kate said. Sarah felt sick. How did they know about her family's history? That was something she'd never shared with anyone. Her bedroom door opened. All 5 friends filed in, their faces showing concern and sadness, but their eyes were different. Clinical. Cold. "Sarah, sweetie," Emma said in that soothing voice. "We need to talk." Sarah backed against her window. "Get out of my house." "We can't do that. We're staging an intervention." An intervention for what? Emma pulled out her phone and started reading. Based on your recent messages and behavior, we believe you're experiencing a severe mental health crisis. We've documented everything. She showed Sarah the phone. The group chat history showed months of increasingly erratic messages from Sarah. Paranoid rants, desperate pleas for help, threats of self-harm, none of which Sarah had ever written. "That's not real," Sarah whispered. "Sarah, you wrote all of this," Jess said softly. "We have screenshots, timestamps, everything." Sarah realized what was happening. Her friends weren't trying to help her. They were trying to make her seem crazy. But why? "What do you want from me?" Emma exchanged glances with the others. "We want you to get the help you need." "I don't need help. I need you to leave." "Sarah," Rachel said, "we've already contacted your parents. They're on their way home. We've also reached out to the mental health services at your school." Sarah felt trapped. Everything they were saying would be backed up by fabricated evidence. Her own friends were systematically destroying her credibility, making it impossible for anyone to believe her side of the story. "Why are you doing this to me?" The question hung in the air for a long moment. Finally, Emma smiled. And for the first time, it looked genuine. "Because it's fun," she said simply. The mask slipped completely. All 5 girls looked at Sarah with expressions of pure entertainment, like she was a fascinating experiment. "You're so trusting," Mia added. "So grateful for friendship. It made you incredibly easy to manipulate." Sarah felt like the world was tilting. "We've been friends for 3 years." "No," Kate corrected. "We've been studying you for 3 years, learning your weaknesses, your triggers, your fears, building a psychological profile." "But why?" Emma shrugged. "Why not? Do you know how boring lockdown has been? This gave us something interesting to do." Sarah stared at them in horror. "You destroyed my life for entertainment?" "We didn't destroy your life," Rachel said clinically. "We just recontextualized it. Everything that happens to you from now on will be filtered through the narrative we've created." Poor Sarah, struggling with mental illness, unable to trust her own perceptions. Sarah realized the full scope of what they'd done. They hadn't just isolated her socially. They'd created a false history that would follow her everywhere. Anytime she tried to tell someone what really happened, she'd sound paranoid and delusional. "The beautiful part," Jess said, speaking for the first time in her usual quiet voice, "is that the more you try to convince people we're lying, the crazier you'll sound." Sarah heard cars pulling up outside. Her parents, probably, maybe school counselors, all coming to help poor, mentally ill Sarah, who'd been sending concerning messages to her worried friends. "You won't get away with this," Sarah said desperately. Emma looked genuinely puzzled. "Get away with what?" "We're concerned friends, trying to help someone in crisis. We have documentation, witnesses, evidence. What do you have?" Sarah looked around the room at 5 faces she'd trusted completely. 5 people she'd shared her deepest secrets with. 5 friends who'd spent 3 years earning her trust, just so they could weaponize it against her. The front door opened downstairs. Her mother's voice, panicked and grateful. "Thank God you girls were watching out for her." Sarah closed her eyes and understood that her old life was over. Whatever happened next, she would always be the girl who'd had a breakdown during lockdown, the girl whose friends had to stage an intervention, the girl who couldn't tell reality from paranoia, and her friends would be remembered as heroes. The loyal friends who'd saved Sarah from herself. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at Emma one last time. "I trusted you." Emma's smile was radiant. "I know. That's what made it so perfect." The footsteps were coming up the stairs now. Sarah's new reality was about to begin. A reality where she was the unreliable narrator of her own life, where every truth she tried to tell would be dismissed as delusion. Her friends had given her the perfect gift, A story so believable that no one would ever question it. After all, who would believe that 5 teenage girls would spend 3 years orchestrating the systematic psychological destruction of their friend, just because they were bored? Sarah looked out her bedroom window at the world beyond, a world where she would never again be able to trust her own perceptions, never again be able to form genuine friendships, never again be able to tell her story without sounding insane. Emma was right. It was perfect. 3 stories, 3 friendships, 3 people who learned the hardest lesson of all, that the people closest to you have the power to hurt you in ways strangers never could. Maya discovered that some people collect friends like trophies, building trust only to exploit it. David learned that friendship can be a performance, with every shared moment calculated for future use. And Sarah found out that love and loyalty can be weaponized, turned into tools of destruction by people who see human connection as a game. The scariest part isn't that these things happened. It's that they're happening right now, somewhere, to someone who thinks they've found their best friend forever. So ask yourself, how well do you really know the people you trust most? What secrets might they be keeping? What are they really thinking when they smile at you, hug you, tell you they care? Because sometimes the monster isn't hiding in the dark. Sometimes it's sitting right next to you, calling you its best friend. If these stories made your skin crawl, like the video it tells the algorithm you survived, sob sob. Subscribe and turn on the bell. We drop new nightmares regularly. Share with someone brave, or someone who thinks they are. Comment below. We want to know what you would have done. Some stories don't end when the lights come on. This is Dread Dynasty. We'll see you in the next scare.